Hi, this is Mac from Mac's List. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about my new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. I've been helping job seekers find meaningful, well-paying work since 2001, and now I put all my best advice into one easy-to-use guide. My book shows you how to make your resume stand out in a stack of applications, where you can find the hidden jobs that never get posted, and what you need to do to ace your next job interview. Get the first chapter now for free. Visit maxlist.org/anywhere. This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of Mac's List. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ben Forstag and Jessica Black from the Mac's List team. This week, we're talking about how to break the rules to get the job you deserve. Every employer has rules it wants job applicants to follow. Common directions include use our online form or don't call our human resources office. And as job seekers, we learn other rules. We stuff our applications with keywords, and we fill our resumes with professional jargon. Our guest expert this week is Liz Ryan. She says the people who ignore or break the rules get the best and the most satisfying jobs. Liz and I talk later in the show. Every job seeker wants to stand out. Ben Forstag has found a blog post about the most outlandish steps people take to land a job. He tells us more in a moment. Do employers who offer unlimited vacation time actually expect you to use it? That's our listener question of the week. It comes from Nicole Wilson in Portland, Oregon. Jessica Black offers her advice shortly. First, as always, let's check in with the Mac's List team. And this week, Ben, Jessica, we're talking about breaking the rules to get the job you want. And when have you two broken the rules during a job search, and what happened?
Well, that's a great question. It's a kind of a stumper, I feel like. I don't know if it's considered breaking the rules, but sort of going around the traditional model. I would say just I've used a lot of connections or a lot of models of making connections to get the job, whether it's volunteering and making those connections or just friends of friends and various networks. So those are the only things that I can think of. What do you think, Ben?
Yeah, much the same. I have a personal rule when I'm job seeking, which is never fill out an online form unless you've got some other way to access the company or the hiring manager, because you could waste days just filling out those long online forms where they want to know your high school GPA and your best friend's name from third grade and all that stuff. And I think it's a waste of time unless you have some other way to reach out to the company. And so I've found all kinds of different ways to find the hiring manager's name and either reach out to them directly or through a shared contact. Or once when I was feeling particularly brave, I just called them up on the phone, kind of cold called.
Wow.
That one didn't work out so well, but I think the other options of kind of working through your established networks always helps.
And what I'm hearing both of you say is that you've taken an unconventional path. I think Liz is going to talk more about this. Many of us think that there's only one way to apply for a job, and that way is look at a company's website, check for job listings, go to job boards, and then follow the rules. Fill out the forms, wait for a call back, and basically wait to be picked. And I'm hearing both of you haven't done that.
No, or on reference of what you were saying of the traditional models is, handing out the stack of resumes and taking them around kind of a thing. And no, I think that it's in my experience, a better model to use the connections.
Good. Well, I know we'll talk more about that with Liz. For me, one example, I too have used informational interviews to uncover hidden jobs and then actually get in front of hiring managers who were going through formal hiring processes. And sometimes when I followed the conventional model, I'm thinking of once, and I may have shared this on an earlier show. I sent in an application for a job with a public agency, and I saw someone from that agency right after I applied, and she made it pretty clear that I was going to get a call. I was, I wasn't going to get the job, but I was going to get an interview. I didn't hear anything for weeks, and I called the agency and spoke to the HR office. I said, I just haven't heard back. Is anything happening? And the lady I spoke with said, well, you didn't fill out the essay questions. I said, well, I never received a request. And I could hear the panic in her voice because it signaled that maybe they had made a mistake in their formal hiring process. And so she said, oh, I'll get right back to you. And she called me an hour later. And she really couldn't hide the triumph in her voice, which was, gosh, you said your address was 1729. Isn't that your address on the street I lived on? I said, no, it's it's 1829. She said, oh, well, no wonder you didn't get the well, it's not our fault you didn't get the questions. You made the mistake. Of course, and I think Liz will talk about this. Do you really want to work at an agency where they don't think about how do I get the best people in front of our hiring managers, but do people follow the rules and cross their T's and dot their I's? So in any event, let's move on. And Ben, let's turn to you because you're out there every week searching the internet, looking for websites, books, and tools our listeners can use in their job search and their careers. So what have you uncovered for us this week?
So this week I want to talk about a blog post I found from one of my favorite job search blogs, and that's Allison Green's Ask a Manager blog.
It's a great blog.
It is. And one day we hope to get Allison on the show here.
Allison, if you're listening, there's a spot waiting for you.
So she's actually dedicated an entire page of her website to some of the zany, outlandish things people do to get a job. So these can range from the simple, like the things we've talked about already, or things like listing a fun but fake fact on your resume to intrigue an employer, or using an infographic resume, to the extreme, like sending a box of chocolates to the hiring manager, or taking out a newspaper ad to promote yourself, or advertising your spouse on a billboard, saying, my husband's looking for a job.
Can we include that in the show notes?
Yes.
Do we have an example of that?
Yes. To the what I would call the downright creepy, which is sending a framed picture of yourself to the hiring manager. So I'll give you the quick and dirty of what Allison thinks about these gimmicks. She thinks they're gimmicks and that they don't work. But she dives into it a little bit more in depth than that Cliff's Notes version. It's definitely worth looking at to get some good job search tips on what's okay and what's not okay when you're thinking outside of the box. It's also good for a laugh if you just need to decompress a little bit. So again, this is on Allison Green's Ask a Manager blog, and we will have the URL in the show notes.
Well, thank you, Ben. And if you have a suggestion for Ben, please write him, and we may share your idea on the show. Ben's address is easy to remember. It's ben@maxlist.org. Now let's turn to you, our listeners. Jessica Black joins us, as she does every week, to answer one of your questions. So, Jessica, what's in the MaxList mailbag this week?
Yeah, we have a great question from Nicole here in Portland about PTO. Let's listen to what she asks us today.
Hi, my name is Nicole Wilson, and I'm calling from Portland, Oregon. My question is about PTO. Specifically, when companies offer unlimited paid time off, do they actually expect employees to take advantage of that, or is there a limit to how much PTO they can actually use?
Thanks, Nicole. What an interesting question. We don't necessarily hear this a lot, but now it's becoming more of the norm. And the short answer is yes, absolutely. This is not meant to swindle anyone into being hired at this particular organization and then having the rug pulled out from under you. It definitely is intended. It's unlimited. It's true. I think that employees or employers rather do really want folks to take unlimited paid time off if that's what they need because, downtime, vacation time, playtime is really important to creating a productive workforce, and happy employees are productive employees. And but at the same time, the flip side is that you do have to still work. You can't take the whole entire year off and just be playing all the time. You do have to sort of put in productive work hours, but it's also you can take the time that you need, and I think that's really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a catch-22 here, where everyone knows that Americans tend to not take as much time off as they should, and I think there's some huge number of hours that go unclaimed by the average American worker each year in terms of time off. So these organizations, I think they offer these benefits in order to encourage people to take more time off, because in theory it does help you become more productive when you're on. But I think at the end of the day, you're right that they have a job that they want you to do, and that job in and of itself might have some pretty Herculean tasks associated with it and require just a lot of time. So you have unlimited time off as long as you're doing this very big job.
Absolutely.
Getting it done.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this was an intriguing question, Jessica. I spent a little bit of time just researching it, and I was surprised to learn that companies that have these policies, one of their main concerns is, to Ben's point, that people aren't taking enough vacation time. And that's one of the reasons why the policy is there. There's also, in looking into this, and the companies that offer this policy are big national brands like Netflix or Facebook or Google. I'm sorry, not Google, but LinkedIn. And they are organizations that have a lot of high achievers. So in reading about this, people report a lot of peer pressure to work a lot anyway. So it's an interesting policy, and it's fascinating to me that it's inspired because people aren't taking enough vacation time.
I agree. I think that it is one of those just mind reliever. I don't know if that's a proper term, but just a peace of mind type of an incentive, because I think so many times people get caught up in, I only have 2 weeks and I'm going to save them for this amount of time, and then they just never take anything, and then things come up and they just never take anything. And I think that it's a nice incentive to just give that peace of mind to take whatever you need.
Yeah, and I would just point out, when we talk about the catch-22 here, I mean, these same companies are the same companies that are offering women to freeze their embryos or their 3-year-old children to raise them at some later date.
Not always.
Not
I know
always.
There's a couple here in Portland too that offer that, and it's not the intensive.
Yeah, but the idea here is they want to try to get you to stay at work as long as possible.
Right.
They have the fancy catered dinners. So there's this
or the sleeping lounges and
exactly.
whatever. Yeah.
They've got this yin and yang between giving you nice benefits to bring you in, but also trying to keep you in the office as long as possible.
Sure.
Well, thank you, Jessica. That's a fascinating conversation. If you have your own question for Jessica, please email her. Her address is easy to remember as well. It's jessica@maxlist.org. Or call our listener line. That number is 716-JOB-TALK. That's 716-562-8255. If we use your question on the show, we'll send you a copy of Land Your Dream Job Anywhere, and we'll be sending one to Nicole this week. We'll be back in a moment, and when we return, I'll talk with this week's special guest, Liz Ryan, about how to break the rules to get the job you deserve. Most people struggle with job hunting. The reason is simple. Most of us learn the nuts and bolts of looking for work by trial and error. That's why I produce this podcast, to help you master the skills you need to find a great job. It's also why I wrote my new book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. For 15 years at Max List, I've helped people in Portland, Oregon find meaningful, well-paying, and rewarding jobs that they love. Now, I put all of my job hunting secrets in one book that can help you no matter where you live. You'll learn how to get clear about your career goals, find hidden jobs that never get posted, and ace your next job interview. For more information and to download the first chapter for free, visit maxlist.org/anywhere. Now let's turn to this week's guest expert, Liz Ryan. Liz Ryan is the founder and CEO of Human Workplace, a think tank and publishing firm whose mission is to reinvent work for people. Liz is the author of Reinvention Roadmap, Break the Rules to Get the Job You Want and the Career You Want. She also writes for Forbes.com, LinkedIn, and other publications. And she's a highly sought-after keynote speaker. Liz joins us today from Boulder, Colorado. Liz, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mac.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Now, our topic this week, as you know, is how to break the rules to get the job you deserve. And I think for many of our listeners, this might be counterintuitive. You know, as job seekers, we want to follow the rules and please employers so that we'll get picked. And as you know, so many employers have lots of rules when hiring people. Tell us why it's a good approach, Liz, to break the rules in order to get that job that you want.
Well, you know what, Mac? My background is corporate HR. I've been a corporate HR leader going back to 1984. And so, and I worked for high growth companies, two very high growth companies. So I hired over 10,000 people. And what I saw was the beginnings of the breakdown of the corporate and institutional recruiting process, which, are broken, very, very badly broken right now. Really the worst, most broken process in the workplace is recruiting. Close second, performance review, Mac, but we'll talk about that another time.
Okay.
But recruiting is terribly broken, and every hiring manager knows it because they have to submit on the other side of the wall. They have to submit, a job requisition into an abyss, a black hole, and hope to get great candidates to meet, waiting weeks or months to do so. And job seekers on the other side of the huge walls, we'll use wall as our analogy today because it's very timely, and they have to submit their application in the worst possible way, Mac, as you know. Your name, your street address, where did you work, how long were you there, what were your tasks and duties? Why are you asking me the dang tasks and duties of the job, which any normal person could extrapolate from the job title that I had? These application forms are left over from the 1930s and 40s. We haven't modernized them to keep up with the fact that most people these days are knowledge workers. We don't have to list the tasks and duties for a customer service rep, for God's sake. Tell us what you left in your wake in the job. Tell us what you brought to the job, how you conceived of the job, how you made your mark on the job, right? This is what they don't ask. And oh my God, you better not have a gap in your employment history, and you better have a progressively more responsible. It's as though we're recruiting in 1958, but it's 2017. So the process is broken. So, coming out of the corporate world myself, it was very, very obvious that job seekers needed help surmounting the brokenness. And I decided to really try and help them and dig in and devise another method for people to get jobs. And that's what I teach now. That's what the book Reinvention Roadmap is based on. Breaking the rules to reach your hiring manager, the actual person with pain, not a bureaucrat. They might be, but you'll have to meet them to find that out, right? But a person who's running a department and has a problem. If they didn't have a problem, a big problem, they would never get approval to even run a job ad. So I want you to read job ads if you want to, but I don't want you applying for jobs through the formal channel, what I call the black hole, the automated online application submission process. Okay,
so I want to back up in a moment and talk about those specific steps that you just touched on, Liz, and the rules that people need to break. But I can imagine our listeners saying to themselves, well, why do corporations or nonprofits or any kind of hiring manager continue to follow these old ways? What keeps this system that you said was first laid out in the 30s and 40s in place?
Well, a big part of it is inertia. The bigger an institution gets, obviously, the harder it is for them to shift. That's why people always compare organizational change in big organizations to turning an aircraft carrier around. So there's inertia in general, and corporations have many, many old and dysfunctional processes. It's not just recruiting, but we're talking about recruiting now because it's such a dire need for so many smart and talented people. Another reason that recruiting is so stuck in the past, Mac, is that it employs a particular piece of software called an applicant tracking system. And this is where you go and type in your name and your address and all the jobs you've ever held, and also upload a resume just to add insult to injury, do the work twice. It's old software from the 80s, but they keep it because HR has no clout. So you would need clout to go to your VP or your boss and say, hey, I need $100,000 or $1 million to replace this software.
So the system's there. It's going to be difficult to dislodge. And what advice do you have, Liz, for people who are they want to work at a company that uses an applicant tracking system?
Yeah, you're going to ignore it. You're going to pretend it doesn't exist.
Okay, well let's talk about that. So I want to work at company X. They do have a formal hiring process. What steps should I take if I'm not going to fill out the online form and use those keywords?
So here's what you're going to do. You want to work at Angry Chocolates, right? Angry Chocolates, maker of fine specialty chocolates. So you are going to have an idea when you start looking at Angry Chocolates and reading their website of what you could conceivably do for them on their payroll, right? Because we have to be smart about this. We can't say, well, maybe I could work for these guys. It depends on what your background is, what your skill sets are, and what kind of business they're in. But let's say you've established that there could theoretically be a way for you to help Angry Chocolates in the inventory control department. You've been doing a lot of inventory control and production planning, that sort of thing, materials, and you don't know that they have an opening. You haven't even looked at the job ads, but you know they have an applicant tracking system and a careers page, and you would rather not mess with that. So you go on the advanced search page on LinkedIn. Now you type in the name Angry Chocolates in the company field, and in the title field, you type in the title of the person who's going to be your hiring manager, your boss, should you go and work for this company. You could try a few different things. Inventory control manager, procurement director, operations manager. Dig around and you will find somebody who is probably either your prospective hiring manager or their boss. So you found your hiring manager and their name is Brenda Barnes. Well, go look at her profile. What's her story? Where does she come from? What does she look like she thinks about? Get a beat on this chick, Figure her out a little bit. Go to the company's website and read about what they're doing. Read their press releases. There's no way to work at your capacity now without being a sleuth. And thank goodness for tools like LinkedIn, which are free and incredibly powerful for job seekers.
So we found Brenda. We're going to sit down and we're going to send her a message. What do we want to accomplish with that communication?
Yeah, it's not a message on LinkedIn. This is an old-fashioned paper letter in the mail, Mac. Paper. Because you have to break the frame. Brenda is used to getting unsolicited email. Delete, delete, delete. She's used to getting LinkedIn messages. Delete, delete, delete. She's a busy woman. She's got a lot on her plate. And so you're going to break the frame and shake up the whole paradigm by sending her a paper letter in the mail, just like the old-fashioned business letters we used to write when we were young.
I remember.
People, Mac, right? You remember?
Yes. Okay, so we sit down at that typewriter, or we're still using a computer, and we print it out, and we put it in an envelope.
So you're going to write a letter, and it's not a cover letter. It's a pain letter. Very different animal. Again, I keep talking about break the frame. You have to shift their thinking because people at work are very boxed up. They're very compartmentalized. I know what to do with this kind of input. I know what to do with that kind of input. You're going to come at them from left field, as we used to say, with something very different. In this pain letter, you're going to talk about them, not you, them. So it says, Dear Brenda, I was thrilled to catch the last half of your CEO's talk at the Portland Natural Foods Expo last week. And I couldn't agree more with his observation that kelp is the new hemp, whatever. Okay? So that first sentence of your pain letter is called the hook. Because all you're trying to do is open a teensy-weensy little aperture in the hiring manager's mind to keep reading. It's not going to say, I am a job applicant and I'm very interested. No. That will send you right back to HR. It would have been pointless in that case to bother sending Brenda a pain letter because it reads like a cover letter and it's going right on the stack. You see what I'm saying? So you don't want to be on the stack. You want to be in a different part of Brenda's mind. You want to keep her mind open. So your pain letter is short and it's to the point. Dear Brenda, I was happy to catch the speech. It was awesome. Paragraph break. I could only imagine that given your new distribution deal with Whole Foods, your talented inventory control team might be taxed to the breaking point. When I was working inventory control for Wiggly Devices, I helped them do the bit, and you tell a little story. So then you finish off the letter by saying, if you're thinking about adding some heft to your team this year, I'd be delighted to start an email correspondence or chat by phone. Very soft. You're not saying, let me in there for an interview. You don't know if she has an opening. You're just saying, I'm here, I'm around. It's called a pain letter because you highlight the pain, the problem that every manager walks around with in their head and their heart and on their shoulders. That's all you're doing. And you're inquiring, gently inquiring, hey, might you have this typical type of pain that growing companies tend to have? If you do, maybe it'd be good for us to talk, but you know what? It's completely up to you. So it's very soft, it's very respectful, but it's getting much more into them as a person and a busy, overworked person than a cover letter would ever do.
So there's so much I like about this strategy that you're laying out here, Liz. One is that you're telling people to get out in front and be clear about their goals and where they want to work and start exploring and identifying opportunities at the companies where they want to be. Plus, you're telling people don't wait for something to pop up on a job board at that company or elsewhere. Start building relationships with the people you want to work for or with inside that company now. And again, finally, what I love about this is you're telling people to think about the problems of the employers, where they want to be, and how they can present themselves as problem solvers.
Well, throughout the book, Reinvention Roadmap, I say, forget your skills. Skills is a made-up dogma that says, I have negotiation skills, I have administrative skills. It doesn't mean anything. It means something different to every one of the 7 billion people living on the earth. Nobody's going to believe you because you say you have negotiation skills. We don't know. Does that mean you negotiated peace accords between warring nations, or does it mean you got the coffee vendor to throw in a couple of extra creamers with the coffee order? Every working person now has to stop thinking of themselves as, bundles of skills and certifications, and they have to start thinking of themselves as consultants who solve particular kinds of problems. We call business pain. The problem that customers are buying from your competitor. The problem that your social media strategy is non-existent. The problem that you have a lot of returns on your product. The problem that your employees are undertrained. Every company has problems, and all of us have to think about the problems we solve.
I agree. And people identify with stories. They stick with the listener, and they give you the opportunity when you're telling your story to show people what you can do rather than tell them. Now, Liz, I know our listeners are thinking, okay, I've sent off this letter. I want to build a relationship with this person. I want to follow up. What is the best way to do that?
You're going to set up some kind of tracking device, right? Like a spreadsheet, just like any job seeker would do. Diary, spreadsheet. You got to have a way to know who did I write to, what did I send them, and when did I send it. The first way to follow up is just resend the exact same pain letter a week later with a different date. Because what will happen is they'll call you or write to you at that point and say, oh my gosh, I actually got your first letter and I meant to call you and I completely spaced. Just think about a hiring manager's life. They're so overstimulated, so much information coming in. Send the same letter again. Second one, you wait a couple weeks, you can send a little LinkedIn. You don't want to say, I don't know why they got my letter. That just puts stress on them. They're like, yeah, I don't know either. Don't worry about it. Don't mention the letter. Just write to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I was just writing because same thing you wrote in the pain letter. I couldn't, I was happy to catch your CEO's talk at the expo, blah, 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 your hook. Of course, it doesn't have to be that. It could be anything. Congratulations on winning the Green Building Award from the city of Dallas. Whatever. Read their press releases, and you'll get ideas for hooks for your pain letter. But there are also examples, of course, in the book, Reinvention Roadmap.
And I assume that leads to a meeting and ongoing conversations that build a relationship.
Well, here's the thing. This is the big point of this book, Reinvention Roadmap, Mac, and that is there is not anymore a solid line between job seekers and consultants. We are all consultants. And I beseech and implore readers in this book multiple times to go down to the office supply store and get some business cards as a consultant, because that is a more permeable membrane to get through as a consultant. When you send a pain letter and it hits pay dirt and they call you, you cannot say, well, do you have any openings? You cannot ask them for $80,000 worth of budget and benefits. That's way too much. That's like going on a first date and asking somebody to move in with you. You've got to probe for the pain and say, is there anything going on, that I can help with? You're going to be smart like a consultant, have done your research, and show up with a pain hypothesis already in mind.
Well, that's a terrific strategy. I think it's very clear, and I'd like the alternative path you're laying out here, Liz. And I know that you lay out many more tactical steps in your book. Now, tell us what's coming up next for you. I know your book just came out in December. Tell us more about it and what's lies ahead for you in 2017.
Well, the company Human Workplace, I started in 2012 to bring out this idea on both sides of the equation, Mac, for job seekers and working people, how to bring yourself to work, how to get a job that deserves you, not just any job. And then when you're on the job, how to really feel your oats and find your voice and your backbone. And this is something that people don't talk about at work, is how sort of crunched down a lot of working people are and feeling very disempowered. And my message is you're going to empower yourself. And then on the other side of the equation, for employers, it's how to humanize your workplace and reinvent work for people, from recruiting to management and leadership and the practice of HR and evaluation and pay and every single thing that we do at work, getting out of a mechanical mode and back into a human mode to really celebrate the brains and talent and hearts and guts of the people who work on a team.
That's terrific. Well, I know listeners can learn more about your work by visiting your website, which is humanworkplace.com. Liz, thanks for being on the show this week.
Hey, thanks, Mac.
It's our pleasure. We're back in the Max List studio with Jessica and Ben. It's a great conversation. I hope you both enjoyed that. I love the points that Liz was making about the search, and while she puts it in the context of what she calls the human workplace and stresses the importance of breaking the rules, I also think she's making the same point that we make here at Max List and other career experts do too, which is that if you really increase your chances of finding work you can love, and by thinking outside the conventional hiring process, and the way you do that is being clear about your goals, identifying people who are doing the work that you want to be involved in, thinking about their problems, and finding ways to connect with them before a job is posted, and presenting yourself as a problem solver and understanding their needs and showing how you can address those needs. What about you two? What are your thoughts?
I liked her strategy of positioning yourself as a problem solver and being a little bit more proactive in your relationships and your courting of companies. And I think sometimes we wait for the job description to be posted and what the problem the employer needs, and then we're all reactive to it as job seekers. And she's really advocating this model of, here's what I'm really good at as a job seeker or as just a person. Here are my skills. Here are the problems I can solve. And then putting yourself out there to companies saying, like, I don't know if you have this problem even, but here's a problem I can solve for you. And that essentially puts you at the front of the door and at the front of the line for a job search, right? Because you're essentially defining the problem and defining the solution all before they even put a formal job description out there.
Excellent point. Jessica, what are your thoughts?
I agree with both of all the points that you both have made, and kind of following up with what Ben just mentioned. I really liked her point about not just stating skills, not just saying I'm skilled at insert whatever there, but
cross-cultural communications.
Yes, exactly. But just
Microsoft products.
Absolutely. I'm skilled in whatever it is that you truly believe that you are, and probably really are, but sort of following that up with a demonstration of how you're skilled in that, and a story. I liked that her suggestion of telling a story about that, because like you said, Mac, that's always more compelling than just a list of a bunch of skills that are sort of arbitrary in on a paper. So I liked that.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed her unconventional approach, and I think it is a smart way to go. So I encourage. I liked what I heard in the interview. Well, thank you both for those thoughts, and thank you, our listeners, for joining us for today's episode of Find Your Dream Job. If you like what you hear, please sign up for our free weekly newsletter. In every issue, we give you the key points of that week's show. We also include links to all the resources mentioned, and you get a transcript of the full episode. If you subscribe to the newsletter now, we'll send you our job seeker checklist. In one easy-to-use file, we show you all the steps you need to take to find a great job. Get your free newsletter and checklist today. Go to maxlist.org/podcast. And join us next Wednesday when our special guest will be Abby Kohut, who is on a mission to educate 1 million job seekers. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job.